It is no secret objectivists worship Aristotle as their primary inspiration for their philosophy and their principle of the primacy of existence. It is also no secret Aristotle and his teacher Plato are held to the mythological status as fundamentally opposing forces and their core ideas of worldliness and otherworldliness. Yet another non-secret of objectivism is that Ayn Rand herself, the mother of objectivism, held herself to the same mythological, historical, and philosophical war of worldliness versus otherworldliness on the side of Aristotle. And her chosen arch-nemesis is a man who never left his hometown, let alone being alive to have this beef with Ayn. Of course, we are talking about Immanuel Kant. The principle of existence as primary states that things are independent of our thoughts and feelings. As Rand put it herself, quote, "The primacy of existence, of reality, is the axiom that existence exists. That is, that the universe exists independent of consciousness, of any consciousness. That things are what they are, that they possess a specific nature and identity. The rejection of these axioms represent a reversal, the primacy of consciousness, the notion that the universe has no independent existence, that it is the product of consciousness. No amount of wishing alone will have power over external objects. To have consciousness or awareness of any object or thing is to presuppose the dependence of awareness of an object. The awareness of an object presupposes the object has a definite nature to it that cannot arise a contradiction in its nature by the mere concentration of consciousness, or at all. Otherwise, consciousness of A may mean A is also not A in the same respect. Thus, the slogan of Randians is A is A. It is what it is. To quote John Galt from Ayn Rand's 1957 fictional magnum opus, quote, "I am giving the outline of what I consider to be the essentials of an objectivist philosophy adapted to the requirements of science and to the concrete experience of mankind." End of quote. No, wait. Oops, I was off by 32 years. Also, that was a quote from the Platonist Alfred North Whitehead's Science in the Modern World. Whitehead elaborates that the objectivist, quote, "creed is that the actual elements perceived by our senses are in themselves the elements of a common world. The things pave the way for cognition, rather than vice versa. The intermediate subjectivists, who hold that the things experienced only indirectly enter into the common world by reason of their dependence on the subject who is cognizing. The objectivist holds that the things experienced and the cognizant subject enter into the common world on equal terms." End of quote. Well, this is awkward. This kind of puts a wrench in the whole nice and neat mythological war between Plato and Aristotle that has been raging for generations. Or does it? What do I really mean to say when I call Whitehead a Platonist? After all, you have this legendary quote from Whitehead's Process in Reality. Quote, "The safest general characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato." End of quote. Already, we see parallels between the two schools of objectivism in regards to how they interpret the history of philosophy, but this is the divergence. Quote, "By stating my belief that the train of thought in these lectures is Platonic, I am doing no more than expressing the hope that it falls within the European tradition. But I do mean more. I mean that if we had to render Plato's general point of view with the least changes made necessary by the intervening 2,000 years of human experience in social organization, in aesthetic attainments, in science, and in religion, we should have to set about the construction of a philosophy of organism." End of quote. Whitehead and his philosophy of organism puts himself squarely within Team Plato. But the thing is that there is no big fight of ideas between Plato and Aristotle because Aristotle plays a vital role for the philosophy of organism too. Quote, "The general Aristotelian principle is maintained that, apart from things that are actual, there is nothing, nothing either in fact or in efficacy. This general principle will be termed the ontological principle. It is the principle that everything is positively somewhere in actuality, and in potency everywhere. Yet again, we see Whitehead expressing the primacy of existence, this time through his ontological principle. Anything actually real has a finite nature and a definite identity. The ontological principle may be expressed as the primacy of actual entities. How can it be an admirer of Plato and a hater of Plato hold basically the same metaphysical principle of the primacy of entities? I believe we can find this answer in Process and Reality. Whitehead holds that the Platonic forms are real, as opposed to Ayn Rand, but unlike Plato, who held the forms as sufficiently real and any actual entity as insufficiently real, Whitehead reverses this. The forms in the philosophy of organism have been termed the eternal objects, and are insufficient to the sufficient actual entities because only actual entities possess subjectivity. What we see here being done is a reversal of Plato's otherworldliness into a Platonic yet worldliness philosophy. There is a parallel with Immanuel Kant too. To quote Process and Reality, quote, Locke always supposes that consciousness is consciousness of the ideas in the conscious mind, but he never separates the ideas from the consciousness. The philosophy of organism makes this separation, and thereby relegates consciousness to a subordinate metaphysical position, and gives to Locke's essay a metaphysical interpretation which was not in Locke's mind. This separation asserts Kant's principle, a bunch of German, I'll throw it up on screen, but Kant's principle is here applied in exactly the converse way to Kant's own use of it. Kant is obsessed with the mentality of intuition, and hence with its necessary involution in consciousness. End of quote. And again, quote, the philosophy of organism is the inversion of Kant's philosophy. The Critique of Pure Reason describes the process by which subjective data pass into the appearance of an objective world. The philosophy of organism seeks to describe how objective data pass into subjective satisfaction, and how order in the objective data provides intensity in the subjective satisfaction. For Kant, the world emerges from the subject. For the philosophy of organism, the subject emerges from the world. End of quote. It is clear then that the objective of the philosophy of organism is a this-worldliness approach to Platonism, using the principle of existence and entities holding primacy over consciousness and action, inspired by Aristotle, and that it is an anti-Kantian approach. It almost sounds familiar to what Randians aim to achieve, except Randians take a hostile approach to Plato and Kant, while Whiteheadians take a humble and respectful approach to Plato and Kant. Nevertheless, I confidently interpret the primacy of existence and the ontological principle as the same shared Aristotelian principle. I won't argue here why I have switched teams, but in brief, I have found Whitehead to exemplify the Aristotelian principle in his philosophy of organism more satisfying than objectivism. I am continuing to enjoy reading Whitehead, and I will continue in my growing understanding of the philosophy of organism. For now, thanks for watching. If you liked what you watched, give it a like. If you have something to say, comment down below. And if you want to see more of my shit, subscribe. There's a Discord link down below. And that'll be it.